Alright, this week we're going to look at central idea, which is similar to the main idea, supporting detail again, and summary. How do we summarize a passage? So what is the central idea? Central idea, like the main idea, is the main point of a text. The reason that we call it something different, you'll hear main idea, you'll hear central idea, is that sometimes a longer text can have more than one main idea. Paragraph 1 may be about one point, paragraph 2 may be about another point. So then we have to think about, okay, well, there's many main ideas in this passage, but what's the central one? What's the one that covers everything, the whole entire passage? We call that the central idea. The central idea could be a moral, it could be a lesson, it could be an opinion that's being argued, or it could be a claim that's being made. Central ideas can be directly stated. There might be a sentence that you can pick out and go, oh, this is the central idea. Or they might be implied, inferred. Okay? A stated central idea is actually written out in the text, and an implied idea, central idea, and an implied central idea is not stated directly in the text. It's only suggested or hinted at. Finding the central idea begins with reading the text carefully. The reader examines the text for clues that demonstrate the text's main point. Sometimes the central idea of the text is not stated directly. Remember this from last week. And we'll have to use inference, which is a very important skill. Recall last week we talked about the topic and the main idea. The topic is the subject of the text, what the text is being written about. To discover the topic of a text, ask yourself who or what the passage is about. Once you know the topic, you can use that information to find the central idea. Ask, what is this passage saying about the topic? All right, what is a summary? A summary is a brief description in your own words of the main points of the text. Summaries are short. They should generally be no longer than 25% of the text they are summarizing. That's a quarter. They should be accurate, just the facts. They need to be able to be supported by textual evidence. And they should be impartial, which means they cannot contain your personal opinion. No matter how strongly you feel about what you're reading, your summary should not reflect that. It should have no personal opinion in it. So when you write a summary, you need to identify the name, the title. You need to identify the author. You need to state what the central idea is, and then include the significant supporting details. And we'll see a sample of that in a moment. All right, let's look at the steps you'll be using to do your apply step prep work. All right, apply practice 1 asks you to identify the central idea and support. Step 1 is to read the assigned passage. So I'll read this passage with you. The real reason it sank, we don't know who the author was, so we're going to say by unknown. It is common knowledge that the Titanic, that unsinkable ship launched in 1912, did indeed sink. The horror of what the passengers experienced has been explored in books, on film, and on the stage. Some did live to recount that dreadful day when the Queen of the Seas hit an iceberg near Newfoundland and a hole was sliced in the hull of the magnificent craft. All right, step 2 asks you, what is one central idea in the text? Remember, the first step in finding the central idea is first determine the topic. What's the topic of this passage? The Titanic. And from the details, we know that the central idea is that the sinking of the Titanic was a horrible event for the passengers. Step 3 asks you to provide a key detail to support your answer. So, are you right? Did you pick out the right central idea? What key detail, what supporting detail in this passage can we use that will support this? The horror of what the passengers experienced has been explored in books, on film, and on the stage. This supports that the sinking of the Titanic was a horrible event for the passengers. The next step asks you to find a second central idea in the next part of the passage. So I'll read the second part of the passage with you. Could the accident have been prevented? Could the lives of the passengers and crew who were lost have been saved by having a more watchful first mate? Recent diving explorations to the remains of the ship revealed some startling news. The ship was not destined to sink despite hitting the iceberg. The findings suggest the real cause of the sinking of the Titanic was due to faulty rivets or bolts holding the sea doors shut. When the ship hit the iceberg, the rivets loosened and permitted water to enter the hull, very likely causing the ship to sink. Okay, so the second central idea is that the accident was not caused by hitting the iceberg, and it could have been prevented. Step 5 asks you to provide a key detail to support your answer. So we pull out this quote, the findings suggest the real cause of the sinking of the Titanic was due to faulty rivets or bolts holding the sea doors shut. And this quote supports our second central idea. Apply Practice 2 asks you to identify central idea and support. Step 6. How does the first central idea develop over the course of the text? Well, the first central idea gives a brief background of the tragedy of the sinking, and it includes words that support that tragedy, like horror and dreadful and sliced. Step 7. Write down an example from the text that help you see the advancement of the first main idea. So this quote shows the advancement of the first main idea. Apply Practice 3 asks you to analyze the development of the central idea. Step 8. How does the second central idea develop over the course of the text? Well, the second central idea introduces the idea that this horror could have been prevented. So we've gone from just a background about how horrible it was to how it could have been prevented. In Step 9, we're asked to write down an example from the text, textual evidence, that helps you see the advancement of the second central idea. And we have this quote from the text that, again, we went from talking about the background of the Titanic and how horrible it was that it sank, and now all of a sudden we have this new information that the ship should not have sank. Step 10, how did identifying these two central ideas help you to understand the text better? Well, I understood that the sinking of the Titanic was a tragedy that did not have to happen if better care had been taken with choosing and installing equipment, the rivets, on the ship. Step 11, how do the central ideas relate to other supporting ideas in the text? Well, all of the supporting ideas in the text back up the two central ideas. And in this step, that's what you're looking for. You're looking to make sure that every single thing in that text, whether you wrote it down as one of the key details or not, everything in there should support the main ideas, the central ideas. And in this case, it does, mainly that the sinking of the Titanic was tragic and that the sinking of the Titanic could have been prevented. The entire passage is about these two central ideas. In Step 12, in Apply Practice 4, you're asked to write an objective summary of the text. Remember, an objective summary means one without your opinion in it, okay? So be sure you don't include any opinions. You need to include the title, the author, the genre, the central ideas, and the supporting details. Here's my summary that I wrote. The article, The Real Reason It Sank, by an unknown author, talks about how tragic and horrifying the sinking of the Titanic was. The article points out that the ship did not sink because it hit an iceberg. Scientists have discovered that the real reason the Titanic sank was because of faulty equipment that failed when the ship hit the iceberg. The author points out that the Titanic should not have sank. The ship would have truly been unsinkable if the equipment had not failed. Okay, so in this summary, I've included the title of the article. I've included the author of the article. I've included the genre. It's an article. It's not a novel. It's not a poem. It's not a song. It's an article, and I started out that way. I've included the central ideas that I'd picked out. The sinking of the Titanic was tragic, and the sinking of the Titanic could have been prevented. Both of those central ideas are in here, and I've included a few of the supporting details. So in this very brief summary, I'm able to tell you what that article was about. And notice I have not included my opinion whatsoever. So when writing your summary, you always want to check, did you include the title? Did you include the genre? Is it an article, a poem, a song, novel, short story? Did you include the author? If there was an author. If there was not an author, then you should put anonymous or unknown. Did you include the central ideas that you picked out? Did you make sure you had no opinion in your summary? And did you make the summary less than 25% of the size of the original text? Okay, so you can put them next to each other, and your summary should only be about a quarter of what the actual original text was. Okay? All right, now it's your turn, and you can work on the steps in the Apply Step Prep for week 2. As always, feel free to come back to the video if you need some extra help. See you next week.